The Boys showrunner said something last month that got almost no coverage. He said the writers had to keep rewriting season 5 because the things they'd invented as fiction kept happening in real life first. He wasn't talking about superheroes. He was talking about the systems. What follows are 5 technologies currently in operation, not theoretical, not proposed, not subject to future legislation, running now. These aren't separate systems, they're layers of the same infrastructure. Let's start with the one that already has a file on you. Somewhere in a database you've never accessed, you have a score. It's not your credit score, it's not your tax record. It's a number that estimates the likelihood you will be involved in a violent crime, not based on what you've done, but on who you know, where you live, and which databases your name has appeared in. This is predictive policing. And it's already been used in Chicago, Los Angeles, New Orleans, and dozens of other U.S. cities. The Chicago program, called the Strategic Subject List, ranked over 400,000 people by risk level. Most of them had no criminal convictions. They were flagged for associations, the person on the list next to them, an address connected to a prior incident, a contact recorded during an unrelated stop. Nobody on the list was told they were on it. Here's where it becomes personal. Your score can change because of someone else's behavior. Your friend gets stopped by police after a traffic incident. His score changes. Then yours does too. Because you're connected in the system. You're not notified. You can't appeal it. You may never know it happened. And the score doesn't stay contained. Because the predictive policing infrastructure was built on data. And that data came from somewhere. That score was built from information you handed over. Your location, your associations, your digital patterns. What you didn't know was that the government had a separate program, quietly deciding what to do with everything else you'd sent. At some point in the last 10 years, you sent a message you thought was encrypted. An email, a banking transaction, a private communication of some kind. You may have even checked. It said, end-to-end encrypted. You assumed that meant private. It's in a government facility right now. In June 2013, Director of National Intelligence James Clapper confirmed under oath before the Senate Intelligence Committee that the NSA had been collecting communications data at scale. The Snowden documents, cross-referenced with the NSA's own Inspector General report, detailed a program called Muscular that intercepted and archived encrypted communications in bulk. The stated justification was national security. The practical reality is that they collected far more than they could ever process. But that's not the part that matters. The part that matters is the timer. Current RSA encryption, the standard protecting most private communications, is unbreakable with today's computing power. Quantum computers, now in accelerated development in the US, China, and the EU, are estimated to break that encryption within the next 5 to 15 years. The surveillance already happened. The reading is just scheduled. Every private message you sent a decade ago believing it was protected exists as ciphertext in a storage facility, waiting for a machine that doesn't exist yet, but almost certainly will. They didn't need to read it when they collected it. They only needed to keep it. The data they stored came from your devices and your communications. What they built next was a record you didn't consent to and didn't know you'd contributed to. One that goes further than your behavior. It reaches into your biology. You can end up in a genetic database without ever taking a DNA test. Most people don't know this is possible. It's been possible for years. The FBI's CODIS database holds over 21 million genetic profiles collected directly, through arrests, convictions, and voluntary submissions. That's significant. But there's a second route that operates under entirely different rules. You share approximately 50% of your DNA with a sibling or parent, around 12.5% with a first cousin. In genetic genealogy, even a distant match is enough to identify you. Investigators don't need your DNA. They just need enough relatives to narrow the map. In 2019, a genealogy platform called GEDmatch quietly changed its terms of service to allow law enforcement access to its database of voluntarily submitted consumer profiles. No announcement. Most users didn't notice. Because the database was built from people choosing to learn about their ancestry, it wasn't subject to the legal constraints governing government collection. The Golden State Killer was identified this way. That outcome felt satisfying. But the mechanism that produced it has no geographic boundary and no consent requirement for the people identified through their relatives. A third cousin you've never met uploaded their ancestry results 3 years ago. That's enough. Enough to place you in a family tree. Enough to connect you to a location. Enough to appear in a legal proceeding you have no knowledge of. And once identities become linkable across systems, separate databases stop being separate. Even if you found a way around everything so far. If you never used a phone, never sent a message, never had a relative curious about their ancestry, the next two programs wouldn't require your participation at all. Between 2016 and 2022, over 200 U.S. government personnel reported identical symptoms while stationed in Cuba, China, Russia, and Washington, D.C. Vertigo, a sensation of pressure inside the skull, high-pitched tones perceived in one ear only, followed by permanent cognitive damage, memory loss, difficulty concentrating, impaired balance, with no visible injury and no conventional medical explanation. The government called it Havana syndrome and spent 6 years publicly describing it as unresolved. In 2023, a classified intelligence assessment, partially declassified under congressional pressure, concluded that a pulsed microwave or radio frequency weapon was the most probable cause. The technology has existed since Soviet research into radio frequency bioeffects in the 1970s. A weapon of this kind, by its nature, leaves no visible injury and no conventional forensic trace. That's not an accident. That's the point. The people who were targeted were, by professional definition, the people most aware that systems like this exist. Intelligence officers, senior agency staff, the people whose job it is to know. It found them anyway. Every program so far can be framed as data collection, law enforcement, or defense. The last one can't. On the morning of September 11th, 2001, before the second tower was hit, a set of protocols quietly activated that most Americans still don't know exist. The vice president was moved to an undisclosed underground location. A fleet of aircraft, including the airborne command post known as Looking Glass, went to alert status. Classified chains of command activated, and a framework called continuity of government began running for the first time since the Cold War. Congress was not fully briefed on what those protocols contained. Some members weren't briefed at all. Raven Rock Mountain Complex in Pennsylvania and Mount Weather in Virginia are confirmed, publicly acknowledged facilities, underground government continuity installations capable of sustaining executive branch operations indefinitely, staffed, maintained, regularly updated. What has never been declassified is the criteria. In a real emergency, some people get brought inside. Most don't. The question of how that decision gets made, who decides by what standard, accountable to whom, has never been answered in public. Congressional oversight of the executive branch is near total. There is one structural exception. Continuity of government planning operates under a classification level that has never been fully disclosed to elected representatives. Somewhere, there is a list. It was written without public input. It has been quietly updated, and the people elected to represent you have never been shown it. These aren't 5 separate decisions. A risk score built from your associations. A vault of communications waiting for a machine that can read them. A genetic profile assembled from your relatives without your knowledge. A weapon that by its nature leaves no trace. A survival plan with undisclosed criteria. Each program was justified internally. Each one expanded quietly. Each one connected, by data, by infrastructure, by the same logic, to the others. Nobody announced any of it. Most people imagine systems like this arrive all at once. Announced, debated, voted on. But that's not how modern infrastructure appears. It arrives quietly, one justified program at a time. The showrunner was right. The writers kept having to change the script. Not because reality was stranger than fiction, because it was more procedural, more bureaucratic, more quietly inevitable than anything they could invent. The most dangerous thing about these systems isn't what they can do. It's that by the time you find out they exist, they've already been running for years.